This is Christian Gomez with the New American Magazine, and today we are covering the third and final day of the United Nations Civil Society Conference being held in Salt Lake City. And today with us on the program again is William F. Jasper, editor of the New American Magazine, who is there coming to us from Salt Lake City at the conference. Bill, glad to have you today again on the program. How's it been?
Well, very, very good, Christian. This is the wind-up, the last day of the conference, and things are beginning to wind down, but they're heading in towards the last segment. They're going to be the grand
closing
finale.
Plenary session, correct?
Correct. And that's when the final outcome document, as it's been hammered out here, will finally be revealed. And again, they'll send everybody off in a big push to come to New York next month for the Youth Climate Action Summit, which comes 2 days before the big Climate Action Summit on September 23rd.
So is this conference meaningful at all, considering there will be other conferences to follow that could potentially undo or override any potential positive changes that could come out of this conference in terms of conservative and Christian or pro-life positions?
Well, that would be worth examining here for a little bit. This has been a very significant conference as far as these civil society conferences go, which, as we explained earlier, this is the way in which the UN pulls together all of its agitators, brings in all the young idealists that they want to get marching to come to the big events. And this is the first time that I'm aware of that we have had so many significant conservative, pro-life, pro-family groups represented here. And they had to basically bust in because they were not welcome. And it's very clear that none of them were put on any of the programs to be the main speakers or to be able to represent themselves. In fact, a number of conservative organizations, pro-life, pro-family groups, had been scheduled to be here, and at the last minute, they had their permits removed from them, so they were left holding the bag for airfare for their speakers and experts that they were going to bring here. So there was very clearly an effort, as typical at UN events, to create a narrative which they can present as the universal consensus, which will coalesce around their already pre-programmed agenda.
So do you think that these Christian pro-life groups were perhaps invited to legitimize what the UN would be doing at the conference and to legitimize the outcome document, invite them and make them feel and think as though that they have a say at the table, when in reality the UN is just exploiting them for the UN's purposes?
I'm not sure that they actually invited them. Of course, they basically opened up, said we want as many groups to come here as possible, but they never really put out information. I talked to a number of people that usually go to these events. They didn't even know that this was coming up. But a number of pro-life, pro-family groups decided to take up the open invitation of bringing everybody together here. And they applied, and they were accepted. Most of them had relatively innocuous sounding names. They didn't put their pro-life, pro-family stuff right up in headlights. And so they were accepted, but then as the UN officials found out, but probably by looking at their websites and whatnot, that they were pro-life, pro-family, their inclusivity all of a sudden evaporated, and these people, pro-lifers, pro-family, faith-based groups, which represent the majority of people not only in this country but most other countries, were disinvited. And so they have had to do kind of an insurgency here. And as most of them don't have a great deal of confidence that anything that they get put into the document, if they get it mollified or modified a little bit, that it will have any great lasting significance. And they shouldn't have any illusions about that, because the history of these UN conferences has been that any type of pro-family, pro-Christian, pro-life influences that are exerted here get wiped out when it actually goes to New York to the General Assembly.
So, as we get closer to that closing session, what do we expect to see in terms of speakers or what we might hear being said in the next hour or so as you approach the closing plenary session there at the conference?
Well, we will hear more of the platitudes and the shibboleths that we always hear. They're just going to be talking about uh, the end is coming. We have 10 to 11 years on climate, that we have to take radical action now to stop destruction of the world, that in order to secure the sustainable development goals, we have to implement the whole Agenda 2030 program. And so we're going to hear a lot, of course, about sustainability, inclusivity, tolerance, all of the usual UN catchwords. And all of those are going to be used to cloak what is really, as we've been saying for quite a number of years, an effort to empower the United Nations politically, economically, socially, giving it tax powers, police powers, regulatory powers, all across the globe. And that, of course, is what Agenda 2030 is. As to who will be speaking there, you asked me earlier about whether Mitt Romney might show up, former presidential candidate. And I wasn't aware until you told me that he spoke, I believe it was yesterday, here in Utah, in Ogden at the university there at Weber State University. And so he could be a surprise guest here. He, of course, is a globalist. He supports the United Nations Paris Accord on climate change. He says that global warming is a big threat. He's one of those within the Republican Party who is trying to push us back into that. So he could be a surprise guest here. That would be significant because he is, of course, still a big name in the Republican Party.
And favored among the never Trump crowd within the Republican Party.
Correct.
In fact, yesterday at Ogden at the university, he said that more still needed to be done in terms of climate change, in terms of actions that the federal government should or could be taking. So it would be interesting to see if he does pop up today.
Yes, and as I think you mentioned, Representative Barbara Lee is going to be one of the speakers here. I think that's been confirmed. She's coming. So Mitt Romney, a Republican, neoconservative, who's a globalist, is promoting this agenda. Barbara Lee, of course, comes from the left-wing end of the Democratic Party. Former aide to Ron Dellums and Congresswoman from California, one of the Democratic Socialist leaders in Congress. So we have the whole bipartisan spectrum covered there, with those who are trying to push from both parties to advance this UN agenda.
Okay, Bill, we're down to the last minute. Any final thoughts or words that you have about the conference before we close out?
Well, I would like to leave on a positive note. I did a number of interviews today with people who are here from those groups that we talked about, pro-life, pro-family groups, one from California, from Utah, from Oregon, from Missouri, and a large group of young people, high school and college age, mostly high school age, homeschoolers primarily, who are very knowledgeable, very articulate, and very courageous, who have been tying some of these UN officials in knots. You can tell at some of these sessions, these young people have studied the issues, and they're asking very pertinent, probing, troublesome questions about the process and about the goals and about the claims.
So not the softball questions that they typically get from the mass fake news media then?
Absolutely, and it's very refreshing to see these UN officials who are usually so smug and who depend upon all of the young people that they bring here to regurgitate what they've been fed, appearing to be rather flummoxed and troubled by these questions that are coming from all around the room and from a lot of different voices.
Well, it's good to hear that the young people are rising up, speaking up, and questioning what's going on there. Okay, well, Bill, we're glad that you've been a part of this program this week covering the conference, and we hope to have you on again, of course, in the future to give us any further developments from this UN conference and future conferences, especially as other ones are scheduled later this year in New York City. Take care, Bill. You have a great day and stay safe.
Thank you, Christian.